You might be in a bit of a rush. Just wants to get your thoughts on the event, how it went and all that stuff there. You know, it's closing up in the morning.
It was epic to have people that I've barely known, to people that I've known for 20, 30 years in the same place. I think they took a lot away from that. I felt inspired. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. And I'm excited for what happens next, man. If you were there, you know the vibe, you know the wave, man. It was an amazing event, man. And I'm glad. I'm glad it happened. It was perfect. It was a perfect event, perfect day, man.
Man.
Pick up everybody on the other side of the camera, man. Yes.
More to come, more to come.
More to come, more to come. Stay tuned, stay tuned.
Difficult journey, right? But one of the things that I did, I needed to get my brain spinning again. So I became qualified as a personal trainer. So that at least got me right somewhere. But within a couple of weeks, I realized that's not the way. Then I got qualified to become a college lecturer, and that really opened up the trajectory, right, the pathway for me, and really kind of getting back to working with young people, because that's what I was doing before getting sectioned. So I would say those are two key pillars. Of course, with the art therapy as well, the music, the writing, and the community aspects as well. That was all part of the journey towards recovery. Great question. Any more questions? We've got Annette. Can we pass that over, and then we'll come over here?
Etche, if you could change one thing about the way that you were treated by the mental health system in the UK that you think would have the biggest impact on other people, what would it be?
It's the use of a prison cell as a place of safety. So they call it, they say, prison cell is a place of safety. Now, for me, who is going through, like, one of my biggest fears was I can't be trapped in the house. You heard what happened, right? I was like, I called the police. I'm like, I'm trapped in my house. Get me out of here, man. So now they got me locked in a prison cell. I've done no harm to any individual. I've done harm to the radiator, believe me, right? But I've harmed no individual, right? So they now put me in a prison cell. I'm like, why am I being treated like a psychopath? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And then there's a level of subjectivity in there that jars me to this day, actually. I don't know if I've quite forgiven that one. Because when I read the reports, I spent most of my time in the intensive care units. So there's two wards. There's one with lower security, and then there's the intensive care units. So they put me in the intensive care unit. Why did they put me there? They said I was being aggressive. I'm like, whoa. You've taken me from my bedroom, man. You've took away my freedom, man. What happened to human rights? And now you're saying I'm being aggressive. How would you like me to be? How docile do I need to be to kind of meet the threshold of aggression? And what's wild to me is so subjective, right? Where's Michael Foster? When we get into our debates, right? We can get heated, but that's just how we talk. I'm a gesture guy, right? So one person's aggression is another person's debate. They don't know me. So for the fact that they called that aggression and used that as a means to get me in the intensive care unit is wild to me, right? And there was somebody who was screaming up and down the ward, screaming. And he did not enter the intensive care unit, as far as I know. So what is aggression, right? So that's one aspect. But the main aspect is the prison cell as a place of safety. I think they've pledged to remove it, but pledge? I don't know. I think there was a question up top.
So your journey is quite powerful, I think. And as somebody who's struggled with their mental health as well and getting, admitted as well, asking for help and being on an endless waiting list. I think after all of that, working with kids and working with young adults, I think it's really powerful, like what you learned from them. So what was like the most powerful lesson or the most memorable lesson that you've learned from young adults that you've worked with after all of that journey? Because as somebody who works with kids and vulnerable people and people with barriers, so I'm an interpreter, so people with language barriers, people with mental barriers, people with emotional barriers, like kids who cannot really communicate, all of those things. When you see that, and what kind of lessons have you learned from people after all of that journey and after all of that openness that you've, experienced?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say one of the major lessons is with regards to young people, like there's the challenges being that they're facing in this generation is more than ever, right? There's so much pressure, and it's weird because there's loneliness, right? There's more loneliness, and that's something that I've really kind of honed in on, and I'm kind of making it my mission, like to actually build these bridges and open up opportunities for connections to form. That's why one of my greatest ideas of this academic year was get the students. I'm like, listen, go and record a podcast. Go now, leave the classroom, go away and record a podcast. And they work together and they express themselves. And they're able to express themselves. And I was listening to the podcast with joy. I'm like, this is so amazing. There were people who I thought were shy, but I heard the podcast. I'm like, is this the same him? What's happening right now? So you realize that they have so much to say, but a lot of the time they're not heard, their voice is not heard. And so I feel like that was one of my struggles going through 2015. I'm like, especially in the hospital, they didn't actually sit me down and say, Eche, what's happening in your mind? They made the assumption that they know with clarity. No one actually said, talk to us, what are you going through? Right? And so now flipping that on his head, working with young people, I just want to know, okay, what are you going through? That's why I'm like, listen, do the podcast. And it's for me only, right? It's for my ears only. And that has allowed me to understand some of the struggles that the young people are going through. And then I can weave and integrate that in my lessons. But it's a privilege to get up every day and work with some of the most amazing people on the planet, man. I don't think people understand, man. So thank you for that question. That was an awesome question. Any more questions in the building? Any more questions?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I don't know how I'm going to follow that. Well, you've told me before that you haven't experienced writer's block. So I was wondering, during the process of making music, were there any other struggles that you encountered, and how did you overcome that?
That's a great question. I think, yeah, I don't really experience writer's block. I've got the opposite problem. I've got a lot of ideas, not enough time to execute. But in terms of the creative process, what was my biggest challenge? I think, what was my biggest challenge? I guess it was balance, it was time. Because I put a lot of pressure on myself. I'm like, hey, why don't you release a book and an album? I gave myself 7 weeks. The book wasn't finished yet. I still had tracks to write. I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? But I realized that I work better under pressure. So I'm like, I got like 7 weeks to finish the book, and I went into militant mode. I'm like, listen, I need to maximize my time, stop watching nonsense on YouTube, and I need to focus. And so got the book done, right? Got the album done. So in terms of the creative process, like, it's not something that I struggled with, but it was more so balancing full-time teaching, which there's teachers in it, you know, who got crazy workload, right? So balancing full-time teaching with the writing of the book, with the writing of these albums and the recording process and the promotion. So it was less on the creative side, but it was more so on the promotion and the completion side, right? So to the people who are aspiring creative, it's like, I guess it's like a muscle that we just need to continue to exercise, right? Continue to be creative. And Connor, he's one of the most creative people on the planet, man. And that's how we've been from day one. Like Eche in Life, that came from you. Eche in Life came from Connor, 2015, right? So the thing with creativity is we just kind of need to show up. We just need to show up, right? Just write something, get into a habit, right? There's a brilliant book by Stephen Pressfield, and he talks about, it's called The War of Arts. And in that book, he talks about, listen, you need to show up in the destination, and the muse, they will meet you there with the ideas. But if you didn't show up, then you're gonna miss out on those ideas. So the main piece is to just write and forget the comparison. That's one of my key mistakes, right? One of my favorite tracks on the album is called Thief, right? Thief is amazing, if I have to say so myself, right? So comparison is the thief of joy. And so you as a creative, you wanna be able to just make, right? But once you start comparison, then you start to lose that creative essence, right? So forget about the comparison, right? You are your own standard. You are your own standard. So that's one thing that I had to learn. So I used to compare myself, imagine this, I used to compare myself to who I thought was the best rapper of all time. And I was like, listen, I don't want to write another lyric, right? But then I stopped that process and said, listen, he is him and I am me. And I'm doing what makes sense for me. So release the comparisons, show up, be consistent, right? Yeah, amazing question. I think Solomon had a question as well. And then maybe we'll get maybe 2 more questions because we need to vacate this building by 10 o'clock. So shout out to everybody in the building. Solomon, please.
Leaving the comparison to the side, is there an album, a song, or a book that served as a turning point, as like a miraculous moment for you? Either an album, a song off an album, or a book.
Okay.
You mentioned The War of Art, which is amazing, amazing book, but like maybe an album or a song.
An album, I would say less so of an album, more so of an artist. There's an artist called Lupe Fiasco. And Lupe Fiasco, he is someone who is he's probably the smartest rapper out. But he was smart. He grew up in the ends, in the streets, but he chose not to talk about these and rhyme about these things. So I've always, and he's someone who is outspoken as well. So I kind of looked at Lupe and I'm like, okay, Lupe has inspired me, right, to kind of do this thing. So less so of an album, more so of an artist, an individual artist, man. And I think there's a question from Alex.
Yeah, so from what I've gathered, it's almost like, you know, at this point where you are, it's almost like you've been through a metamorphosis in a sense. Do you get what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But before that, going back to the beginning, I read the book, to the point where, 2015, it's almost like you went through a place where it's almost like death by 1,000 paper cuts, just going through life, being who you are. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of like the anxiety, neuroticism, all that kind of stuff that you go through. But you kind of escalate to another level where it's almost like, okay, throw the knife down, we're playing with guns now, in terms of like extremes. And now you're in a hospital. That's serious. So I want to know, I can kind of guess the answer, but what's the most challenging of the two to kind of deal with? Earlier age, or, what you went through in 2015?
I think, the most difficult part was having experienced 2015 and then to be in the throes of depression. Because it's like I've seen and I've been to the promised land and now I'm in Gehenna, I'm in Hades, man, and I'm trying to get back to where I was. Where's the creativity? Where's the energy gone? Like, I remember one blessed day, right? My dad is not here, but this is a true story, no word of a lie. This was 2016. People that know me know that I like to walk. I walked 100,000 steps in a day, right? Michael and Connor, they know we used to walk, man. 100,000 steps in a day, 150,000 steps in a day. But there was a period whereby I had no energy. My mood was so low that my dad was like, go and get some exercise. And I was like, allow it, man. I'm not trying to do that. So what did I do? I got my phone out, I put some music, and I went to the park that's 2 minutes away. And I just stood in the park. I'm like, okay, yeah. How long until I've simulated a walk? And then I went back home, right? Because I had no energy. And that hurt my heart because I knew where I've been, right? And to have that stripped away, it was like, man. And what's, I guess the wildest part, to go back to the question, is I was then confused. I'm like, to what extent is my personality tied up in 2015? But then I realized that, listen, this body is capable of confidence, right? This body is capable of confidence, and I just need to get back to there. So it was now a reverse process, right? Instead of death by 1,000 cuts, it was the kind of recovery by 1,000 steps. So piece by piece, getting out of that comfort zone, facing my fears. And then once you face those fears, then they're no longer fears, right? So the toughest part is the road to recovery to kind of get back to a level of self-esteem. Yeah. Connor, you got a question?
If you could go back in time to Randall Kramer, Blue Class, Mr. Hartline, and go and talk to young Eche and give him one piece of advice for the future to prepare him for what's to come, what would you say?
Oh, my God. This is one of the greatest questions of all time. I'm still doing the glasses piece. Okay. What would I tell younger Eche? How? You know what? That's a great question. I'm kind I'm wondering, will you allow me to do a little cop out? Because I'm like, listen, I won't tell you anything. I was like, bro, I would just laugh. I was like, listen, you don't know what's gonna happen, boy. I'm like, listen, you're in for a hell of a ride, man. That's what I'll tell younger Eche, man. Because at the end of the day, if something changes, then that's gonna change the end result. So I'll be like, listen, just it's gonna be a roller coaster. That's all I would say, right? Like, you don't know what's gonna happen, right? I guess, but if I did it, let me kind of give you a non-cop-out answer. The one kind of esoteric phrase I would say is, never forget God, which is my name, right? And the second piece I would say is personality isn't permanent. And I think young Eche would like that, because he's like, what is this esoteric message from this angel, man? I don't know what's happening. Well, listen, who knows, man? And if you look at my album cover, you will see that in Greek and Hebrew, it says, album's called Etched in Stone. It has 2 stone tablets, word to Moses. And then it says, never forget God, which is my name, which my grandmother gave me, right? What's in the name? Is it a coincidence that my life has actually lived up to my name? Because now I'm not going to forget God. Listen, what? How can I forget God? Like, my goodness. And then personality is not permanent. That's etched in stone. Do we have any more questions, people? I think that might be it for the question portion. And what's going to happen is, like, I need to get some people some books, right? So I think we got about, let's call it, I want to call it 16 minutes, 16 minutes before we need to gently evacuate the building, right? So if you want to get a book, if you want to say hello to me, I'm going to be buzzing around in the vicinity. I hope you had a blast. Big up to the TikTok family and the cameraman, all right? My name is Eche. We got the album, we got the book. I'm going to be in this corner over here, which is where the books are, right? So you can find me over there. And yeah, it's been an amazing, amazing event. I didn't know what to expect, but this has exceeded my expectations. So thank you very much for.
Guys, I wish you were here live. Did you not? Whoa, you just missed. Hey. We went through a heartfelt discussion with Eche's story of how he went through episodes of manic. Forget the labels. Remember, that's one of the key things he pointed out. Forget the labels because they're prisons, you know?
Come on.
It's live.
No,
Oh.
just recording.
So we're about to close now. We're going to be giving away the books. Everyone's going to grab their copy and we're going to read it and hopefully retain what we've learned, because valuable words have been spoken today. Valuable. Is that not right, cameraman?
Yeah, that's right, still. That's right.
Okay.
Well, as I was spoken about Michael there, still. But yeah, it's been a good session, been a good event. Shout out to Eche, the man over there. Oh, where did you go? You want me up there? Yeah, shout out to him still. Yeah. You're a bit better than me still. You take over from.
Hey guys, come on, rotate.
Say it.
About to pick up the book that I just purchased. Okay, you guys are students, right?
Yeah, we're
Which
students.
Business.
Business. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What do you think of it today, anyway?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that guy is talented, and I'm glad that he's been able to inspire you, and kind of embraced him. You guys have a good relationship. Yeah.
Just glad to have him there, really.
Yeah.
It's like it's really weird because it's like just to have him as a teacher, like so unexpected to like have him come into our lives, and he's not like any teacher I've ever had before. So it's just like it's always encouragement, and it's always like I just don't know how to describe it. It's never like any other teacher. Like he's never harsh on you. It's kind of if you want to be here, come. If you don't, like go. Like, yeah, his style of teaching is just it's very like. It's almost like he knows what it is to be a student. He knows what it is to be our age. So instead of, being harsh and not, he understands.
Like, he's so relatable.
Yeah.
Like, he just understands me when I say, like, this is what I'm going through right now. can you like talk to me, help me? And he did, because I was struggling at one point. Something like really bad happened. And he was there for me. Like, no, like, I was so comfortable talking to him. He was like an older guy. Like,
Is he like one of the only teachers or the only teacher that you're comfortable?
honestly, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Well done, that's good.
What's your experience been like growing up with that chair then?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's always like you said, like he was shy, but like he always had that kind of influence. Dragon Ball Z, old school music, whatever the case is, fighting games in particular. Yeah, so it was always that his influence. And all his friends used to come, so there would always be tournaments and shit. So yeah, it was always like live and stuff. But then when there was like that little episode, that was like really that hard because it's chilling, changing it, and being like living in it. All that was crazy. And thankfully, everything like improved, everything just worked out in the favor. And then you guys are kind of here to see the results of it. He's actually got like people that he's taught coming out to support him. I think that's a big deal. I know what it's like to try and stream to people, whatever. It's not easy getting people's attention. So for you guys to take time out of your day to come all the way here. So yeah, I appreciate it, honestly. Oh yeah, the crib.
Oh man, that was so epic. That was awesome, man. That was awesome.
A signed book. Hey, I got my first signed book.